Cold Creek, a small town on the border of Maine and Canada, had always had something strange about it. No one could quite pinpoint what it was, but if you asked the locals, many would talk about a certain tension in the air. It was a place where secrets gathered like fog over the nearby marshes, and rumors spread faster than the sharp wind off the ocean. For Sam Tucker, a 30-year-old who had lived there his whole life, Cold Creek was home. But 2 years ago, something changed. It started with small things. His neighbors, people he had known all his life, became distant. Someone went missing without a trace, which in a small community always causes a stir. But soon, the incident passed without much concern. Sam couldn't shake it off, though. Something in the town's atmosphere was weighing on him, like the very air was tainted. His dreams grew darker, and his thoughts more troubling. He felt like everyone around him knew some secret he wasn't supposed to be part of. The most unsettling part was the growing suspicion that this secret involved him. When his neighbor, old Robert Finch, died of a heart attack, Sam was given a key to his house. Finch had no family, and Sam had helped him out occasionally with odd jobs. It seemed like a gesture of gratitude, or at least that's what Sam thought. But when he entered the house, he was hit by the musty smell of decay, and in the attic, he found something that would change his view of the town forever. It was an old photo album, filled with pictures Sam had never seen before. But in one of the photos, he recognized his father, who had died when Sam was just 6 years old. That wasn't the most shocking part, though. On the back of the photo was a date, 1993, a year after his father's death. Sam's heart pounded in his chest. He took the album home, but that night, sleep wouldn't come. As the days passed, he fell deeper into his thoughts. Who else knew about this photo? Why was his father in a picture with men Sam didn't recognize? And more importantly, why did he feel like everyone else knew more than they let on? The paranoia began to grow. Everyone looked at him differently. The shopkeeper, the mechanic, even the children playing in the street. It was subtle, but Sam began to feel like Cold Creek had its own plans for him. The more he tried to find answers, the deeper he sank into a mystery whose roots stretched far back into the past, to a time when his father was still alive. And then, strange things began to happen. The phone would cut out in the middle of the night. He heard whispered conversations through the thin walls of his house. But when he tried to track them down, no one was there. Sam knew this wasn't just coincidence. The only question was whether he could uncover the truth before the town swallowed him whole. In the following days, Sam lived in a haze. He went to work, talked to people, but felt like his life was divided into two parallel realities. One was the everyday, ordinary one, full of mundane tasks and conversations. The other was far darker, more real, yet absurd, full of whispers and shadows from the past that had begun to surface. Everything pointed to the fact that Cold Creek's mystery didn't just involve his father. The town had always been tainted. He began to hear fragments of conversations, old legends passed down by the town's elders. Supposedly, back in the 1950s, something had happened on the outskirts of town, but no one spoke of it openly. Over the years, it had become a mere rumor, forgotten by the younger generation. But Sam couldn't let it go. He knew he had to find out what had happened. He began digging through old records, searching archives, visiting libraries in nearby towns. The deeper he dug, the more puzzling the information became. He found an article about a group of men from Cold Creek who disappeared during the winter of 1954. All of them were connected to a factory that once stood on the edge of town. It had been shut down under mysterious circumstances. It was there, according to unconfirmed stories, that something strange had occurred. Some said it was experiments, others whispered about sacrifices. Sam didn't know what to believe, but something told him that whatever happened back then was tied to his father's death. One night, after a long day of combing through old newspapers, Sam felt like someone was watching him. He was walking home along a deserted street, and the air was heavy, like before a storm. Suddenly, From around the corner, an old man appeared. Someone Sam had never seen before. He was hunched over, but his eyes gleamed with something dark. "You should stop, son," the man said quietly, stepping closer to Sam. "Some things are better left alone." Sam instinctively took a step back. For a moment, he wondered if he should respond, but the old man didn't wait for an answer. He just turned and disappeared into the darkness. That night, Sam couldn't sleep. He felt as though he had become entangled in something much larger than himself. He decided that in the morning, he would return to the abandoned factory on the outskirts of Cold Creek. That's where this whole thing started, and he had to know what happened. The next day, armed with a flashlight and a bottle of water, Sam arrived at the ruins of the factory. The place was desolate, overgrown with weeds, the old buildings crumbling with age. Stepping onto the grounds, he felt a strange sense of déjà vu, though he had never been there before. His footsteps echoed, and the silence around him was unnerving. The air smelled of rust and dampness, sending chills down his spine. Sam searched through the dilapidated buildings until he reached an old storage room. Inside, among piles of forgotten items, his eyes landed on an old iron safe, tucked into the corner. The safe was rusted, but still locked. This had to be what he was looking for. After hours of struggling with the lock, he finally managed to open it. Inside, he found a worn document. It was a contract, signed by several men, including his father. The date on the contract was 1954. It was some kind of pact. Below the document was a strange handwritten warning. "Those who read this must know. Cold Creek is not a place for ordinary people. Those who once learn its secrets never return. If you found this, it means it's already too late." A cold chill ran down Sam's spine. He knew he had touched something he shouldn't have. He put the document back and began to retreat. But as he exited the storage room, he noticed a new mark on the door, a chalk-drawn symbol that hadn't been there before. As he stepped outside, he saw figures in the distance. They were approaching slowly. He couldn't make out their faces, but there were many of them. Sam started to run, his heart pounding in his chest. He felt he should never have come to the factory, should never have searched for the truth. That night, when he returned home, he was exhausted. But he couldn't stop thinking about the factory, the document, and the secret of Cold Creek. He knew this wasn't over. These secrets weren't meant to be forgotten. What had begun in 1954 was still very much alive. And now, Sam was part of it. A few days later, he saw the lights in the woods again. This time, he wouldn't ignore them. That night, Sam decided he had to confront what was haunting him. The lights in the woods, his father's voice, the mysterious document. It all pointed to one conclusion. Cold Creek was hiding a secret that drew in anyone who dared to uncover it. With a flashlight in hand, he set out into the woods. The fog hung thick in the air again, but this time Sam felt he wasn't alone. With every step deeper into the forest, he heard whispered voices, as if thousands of souls swirled around him. The same golden lights he had seen before flickered between the trees. Finally, he reached a clearing. In the center stood a circle of stones, and within it were several figures, still as statues. As Sam approached, he recognized their faces. Townspeople, the same ones who had avoided his questions for weeks. "It was inevitable," one of them said, the same old man he had encountered before. "Your family has been part of this for generations. What's happening here?" Sam raised his voice, but he already knew the answer. The town, the factory, the disappearances. It was all part of a pact made long ago. Cold Creek had its dark secret, sacrifices made in exchange for the town's prosperity. His father had tried to escape, to break free from the circle, but he hadn't succeeded. "Now it's your turn, Sam," the old man whispered. "You can't escape." At that moment, Sam realized he no longer had a choice. The lights began to surround him, and his body went numb. He knew he had been drawn into something inescapable, and Cold Creek never let anyone go. The last thing he saw were those golden lights. And then, darkness. The secret of Cold Creek lived on, and the townspeople remained silent as always.